the spiel at the end just kind of left me reeling. The statement of a man who is losing his job, giving the president as high of a rating that he is giving him, when the reason he's losing his job, he acknowledges is directly from the president of the United States, can show you the lengths of political loyalty in this century of politics. And so I wanted to check out the CNN segment where they went to Pennsylvania and talked to people in one of these old industrial heartland towns.
CNN's John King is still here at the desk with me, but he just came back.
It's too fast, too fast.
From Allentown, Pennsylvania, to hear how voters see things today.
Lehigh Valley is a blue-collar battleground. Reminders everywhere of America's manufacturing glory days and of today's big economic challenges. ProDart is a small family business. Tard Harder, the boss. His parents among the workers, trying to keep things going.
So we're kind of slow right now. The money's tight. People are complaining that the rent's really high in a lot of places. Just the cash flow isn't there. So I think everybody's starting to become a little bit more conservative on spending right now.
Just a handful of employees now, 14 when business was better. Harder voted for Donald Trump. Here's him promise tariffs will bring a new manufacturing boom. But sees the opposite so far.
My generation, right now, it's not going to impact, it's going to hurt us. But in the future, for the next generation, it might possibly help them out.
Okay, so just on its face, if you're saying the sentence, this will hurt me, but it could possibly help somebody in the future. You don't even know if it's going to help somebody in the future. You know, a big sign of this was a lot of people talked about bringing, back American manufacturing. Biden talked about it. A lot of people talked about it as this, as kind of like a populistic thing you could throw out into the crowd. And there were some actions taken to do it. There was, some industrial investments made by the Biden administration. There were some tariffs that Trump kept in place. That Biden kept in place from the Trump administration, even some he levied on his own as he was walking out. But if you acknowledge that this is going to hurt you now, but it's maybe going to help your kids in the future, does this not kind of show the complete lack of knowledge of what a tariff is in the Trump movement? The big underline for me was after Trump won, one of the biggest Google searches in the continental United States was, what is a tariff? Even though tariffs was Trump's fundamental economic philosophy about how trade should work in the world for the entirety of his campaign, especially the later halves, but he kept slamming it over and over. Tariffs, 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 tariffs. And when he's confronted at the Economic Club of Chicago about it, he digs in his heels even though he didn't have good answers. And now that he's actually come to implement it, look, I don't even agree that the tariff policies are going to bring about this manufacturing boom that he's talking about. It might help some people. I think it'll hurt a lot of other people. Definitely when we haven't even started to feel a lot of the reciprocal tariffs that could come into place. But with the way that the policy has been implemented, what manufacturing investments are being made? If you implement a tariff and then you walk back on that tariff, and then you implement the tariff, and then you walk back on that tariff, and the investment is supposed to be triggered by a country saying that the only way that we're going to be able to sell to Americans is by manufacturing internally, if the tariffs are going in and out, in and out, in and out, how are you going to gather capital for that investment? How do you go to investors and say, hey, I want to build a iPhone manufacturing plant because this is something that they keep talking about, which is, I don't think is really ever going to happen in this century until I think robots are really making the iPhones, if you're talking about making affordable ones. Honestly, if you're talking about bringing that back here, which we're talking $3.5K a pop for an iPhone in that circumstance, how are you even, before you convince people that that's still somehow going to be profitable, how do you convince investors to give you the capital if they think that the bubble, the economic bubble created by the tariff that would make it at least plausible, could pop tomorrow. It's the lack of consistency in the implementation, which is going to, if this ever has any effect, it's going to drag it out. It's making the painful process of the transition longer. It's making the painful process of the transition more uncertain. It's making people nervous about making those investments. If you either stick to your guns or don't. Stick to your guns or don't.
But it's impacting the people that are here now, today. You know, that's my thing.
In a not good way.
In a not good way.
This is Pennsylvania's 7th congressional district. Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton. More rural as you head north and west. Trump won it narrowly last year, and voters like Harder also helped flip the House seat from blue to red. But Harder isn't sure he will vote for the new Republican congressman again. Not sure he will vote at all. He is 55, but had never voted until this past November.
You have men on men kissing and everything else and all the transgenders. You didn't have that before. You know, there is a God. I'm Catholic. I was just so disgusted.
Oh, okay, well. Okay. You know, I might not have as many employees as before. My taxes, for me, as somebody who's a manufacturer, I got to import my part. It might be more expensive. You know, our quality of living might have, you know, not be what I wanted. But at least now the boys will stop kissing. I'm sorry to report to you, and I can, as an on-the-ground reporter with experience, okay, tell you, it just due to my plans in 2 months when I get back to the States, tell you that there is no shortage. Sorry to inform you.
It, just how everything is in this world. You know, it's just going to crap.
You going to stay?
Am I going to stay in America?
You're going to stay as a voter?
If I feel that things are running properly, yes. If I don't see anything changing, then it really doesn't matter what my vote is.
I just think that I now have a way of helping.
Michelle Rios is on the other side of the MAGA culture wars. She helps run a DEI program.
You know, he doesn't, you know, if you're Christian, you don't gotta kiss guys. Like, when gay marriage happened, it doesn't mean like you gotta do it too, right? It's just for the guys that want it. So sometimes I think that these points might have just not gotten across that, like, if he's been kissing men and he doesn't like it, and he's like, oh God, I can't wait till Trump repeals gay marriage so I don't have to blow men in the bathroom stall every week. Like, you don't have to do that. You can just kind of like not.
Rios is on the other side of the MAGA culture wars. She helps run a DEI program at a local college, helps students with questions ranging from financial aid and tutoring to rumors about immigration crackdowns.
Coming from a immigrant household, being a first-gen student, being a woman of color, being Latina, I know that my purpose is to serve, and so it really is a struggle when there are things preventing that.
Rios worries about funding cuts for DEI programs and also to nonprofits she works with in the bustling Latino community here, like this food bank.
And it just instills fear, and I think that's essentially what the last few months have done to people.
If you had 1 minute with President Trump, what would you say?
I don't think I would want a minute.
I'd recommend some feminist literature. Okay, I'd recommend some. You know, I'd go down there and say, "Sir, have you ever listened to Pussy Riot?"
Just being honest, there's a lot of things that come to mind, but I just don't think I would know where to start.
She was a student in Trump's first term and says she was constantly on edge. She is trying to stay more calm now, trying to better understand the big jump in Trump's Latino support here.
It has to do a little bit with like Latino culture. Sometimes we, don't want to see, women in a certain position or talk to someone that can help you understand information, but not leaving it up to social media, because I think that's also what made a big difference.
Do you have gym or art?
Family
Here we
time
go.
is what Gerard Babb cherishes most. Babb works here on the Mack truck assembly line. Mack is one of the area's largest employers and says as many as 350 layoffs are coming soon. Bab is fairly low on the seniority list.
I was at 171 when they first announced. Now I'm at 218.
So you're trying to get to what, 350?
At least if I can get above 350, it'd be perfect. But as long as past 250, I have a chance.
Bab doesn't regret his vote for Trump, but he thinks it could cost him his job.
I only like playing.
Definitely with the tariffs, I believe they played a part. I think that, yeah, Donald Trump could have had a little bit more finesse instead of using like a blanket policy over everything.
It's like a little bit more finesse. A little bit more. I'm sorry. He went out and tariffed islands that didn't have people in them. That's not a question of a little bit more finesse. That means he walked into the room with a dart and just started throwing them. I mean, like reciprocal tariffs. They're not reciprocal tariffs for the tariffs placed. They weren't even reciprocal tariffs for tariffs. They were reciprocal tariffs for just the existence of trade deficits on countries like Vietnam. We're never not going to have a trade deficit with Vietnam. It is impossible that we're going to get Vietnamese villagers to buy F-150 trucks for them to carry around their water buffalo. That's not going to happen, okay? I live in the real world where the world doesn't just everybody is an American consumer ready to buy our trucks, buy our goods, okay? They have a manufacturing base, a manpower base that has a much lower cost of living and therefore can produce at a much lower cost than we can. And they have specialization and experts in production that we could get with time and investment, but that time and investment would ultimately make a much more expensive product for Americans. And even if we can still do that, if we have to produce every single machine part within the United States, if we're for example, this guy works on making industrial goods, big trucks and shit, right? Not all those parts are produced in the United States. When you're talking about tariffs, the first thought in a lot of these guys' minds, and I understand it, is, oh, so people will just buy American trucks. People will just buy our cars. People will just buy our shit. And therefore, we're going to make more money. We're going to build more trucks and we're going to be able to employ more people. And I can pass this job down to my kids. But the problem is not every component you're sticking into that truck is American. Some of it's Canadian. Some of it's German. Some of it's whatever. And so those component parts are going to become more expensive. So it's not just, oh, you're making the foreign products more expensive. You're also making American products more expensive. And so when he talks about using a little bit more finesse, what you would want to do is target the tariffs in a way that it wouldn't affect the manufacturing base in the United States. And maybe if you really wanted to make those manufacturing parts here, to not burden these companies that need to expand because you want this industrial expansion, you would put in some grants or some money into these companies to say, look, here is a grant from the US government to make a manufacturing part for this industrial good because we don't make enough of them internally and we want to shorten the supply line for national security reasons, XYZ. That makes sense for missiles. That makes sense for stuff that, America would have to have no matter what during a crisis, food and stuff. I don't think it's necessarily the case that we need that for every truck and car manufactured in the United States. But if you have that philosophy, then that's the policy you would take, not burdening the companies that you also want to have enough money to expand.
Everything.
So 4 months in, how would you grade Trump?
I'd give Trump right now a B+. I want stuff to happen right now, but I understand that the gears of Washington move very slow.
Too soon.
What is that even? Let me say, the gears of Washington move slow. The tariffs that were implemented move very fast. That wasn't a question of the gears of Washington move slow. You're feeling the effects of the policy right now. It moves fast, and so that's why you're feeling it. I mean, this just shows like the strong political loyalty of a Trump voter right here. I mean, this dude could lose his job due to this tariff policy. He's openly admitting that if he used more finesse, maybe his job wouldn't be on the line. Maybe it'd be a little bit better if he had more of a plan, which has always been a problem with Trump, is a lack of planning in advance, at least for implementation of policy, maybe not in scheming and backdoor handling. But when it comes to implementation or rollout of these policies, the planning of his has never been the best. But that political loyalty is still there, man. A B is crazy. I mean, it'd be one thing if you said a C, and maybe I'll give him because bad things are happening, but I still see the vision, like a C. But we're talking a B plus. We're just a few digits away from an A. You're almost saying it's basically it's almost perfect, but I might lose my job. He's almost perfect, but I might lose my job.
He says to think about the midterms.
It's very stressful that I'm going to be out of work in the near future because I want to provide for my wife and kids.
Tired.
Much more important worries front and center. Interesting there, Dan, to hear two Trump supporters be skeptical about his promise of a very quick manufacturing boom. So it's worth watching as you head into the midterms. That district has all of the big questions in American politics. Will Trump keep, or can Democrats make progress with those blue-collar workers? The Latino vote there, Trump support went way up. Democrats have a huge problem there. It's a fantastic district. If you just want to sit in one place for the next 2 years and get the economy, get at demographics, it's Pennsylvania 7.
You know what really sucks is Biden gave him the tools to implement a somewhat competent version of Trump's tariff policy. It's not, and look, I'm not saying Trump's tariff policy would have ever been, because I disagree with it philosophically. Not that there should never be any tariffs for any hardening of our industry. I just don't think that at the end of the day that trying to make everything in the United States is going to lead to a better product for Americans, lower cost for Americans, or a stronger economy. Is because if you lose the dock workers and the truckers, if you are losing these workers already in the process, not even talking about how it's been rolled out, I just don't agree that this is the way to go. But if this is the way to go, follow up on what Biden did when it comes to the TMSC plants in Nevada and in that part of the country, where we're talking about making semiconductors in the United States. We're not talking about making the most advanced chips here, but that's the first step before making those types of chips with TSMC. He put the grants down to get those factories started, investing billions upon billions of dollars so we can bring that type of manufacturing for these chips to the United States, because the whole world economy runs on chips. And so having those made internally makes sense. Maybe you don't need to boost it up to make it so every chip internally is made in America, and we can put a bald eagle on it. But making sure they have some short supply line makes sense. You would build on that. But what did Trump do when he got in office? He cut those grants. Whether it was connected to Biden and he didn't want to see a Biden policy succeed, he saw it as saving money before he had put forward the big, beautiful bill that sees a 3 to 4 trillion dollar deficit increase. He didn't pick up the ball, whether it was from spite towards Biden, or he didn't see the logic in it, or he believes that he wants to bring this industrial rejuvenation, not through government grants, but through tariff policy, through taxing these companies and taxing consumers. But I mean, he's not going to be able to shotgun American manufacturing back into the United States. And that's why he said the markets got yippy and he reacted how he did. The reason why Trump has flip-flopped is because he gets scared once he sees how the markets react. He gets scared once he sees how much vitriol has been directed from either the public or the press, and he gets a little yippy and he backs off. But that resistance is going to keep existing if he keeps trying to implement it down the road. It's not like you try 145% tariff 3 months later and everything's going to change. It's easier to fool someone than to convince them they have been fooled. Okay, this would be my question. At what point can the United States worker, manufacturing worker, stop seeing job loss and start seeing job growth? And when will that job growth be so sufficient to have paid for the loss of jobs for the dock workers and the truckers and everybody else that's going to be affected? And there's no good answer for that.